Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Okay, I promise we're going to get to today's episode, but before we do, I have to share the coolest message that I received from an employer recently who used the site to hire their newest employee. Here it goes. My overall experience with Of the West job platform was beyond my expectations. We received over 70 applications for our hiring position and ended up interviewing multiple amazing candidates. We also had an abundance of valuable candidates apply for our internship position as well. Of the West is a great online portal for candidates to search for jobs and for recruiters to find the best talent available in the industry. Thank you, Of the West. Rodeo Life Magazine. Oh my gosh, you guys. So now I'm going to ask you, if you're an employer and you haven't used the site yet, what are you waiting for? The process is easy, it's affordable, and you have the potential to reach some really great candidates who love ag and the Western way of life. And if you're not an employer, you might know of somebody who's looking for a new employee or looking for a new job or looking to connect with a freelancer or a contractor over on the directory. And your willingness to tell people about Of the West makes a massive impact on our business. That word of mouth stamp of approval is the business version of 24 karat gold. I kid you not. No form of marketing beats genuine word of mouth, and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you guys for sharing Of the West with all of your family and friends. We always appreciate it. And thank you to our valued employers for sending in those kinds of words about our platform. It is so appreciated. As always, you guys can go to ofthewest.co to find your next job, employee, or business to contract with. That's ofthewest.co. Gatlin, I'm so excited to have you here today. You have an incredibly well-known online presence across all social channels. And while I feel like people probably think they know you, they really only know a small percentage of what makes up Gatlin Didier. You have a really unique past, obviously, as a ranch kid, somebody who has pursued a legitimate acting career, and you've since moved home and really found your life's calling. So today, I really want to unpack all of that and let people in on the guy they feel like they know so well. So to kind of kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what life was like growing up in Oklahoma, and how you got interested in acting and kind of how that served you now?
Gosh, I hope we have long enough to really cover this basis because it's a really wild story from, just classic small town kid who went out west and, dreamed big. And then somehow where the caveat's different than most of those stories is social media came involved. But really, if we want to take the story where it started out in Western Oklahoma, rural area. Basically, when people ask, where are y'all from or where your ranch is at, we say, okay, if you look on a map, you see Amarillo, Texas, and you see Oklahoma City. We're smack in the middle of them, and then 20 miles north off of I-40. So that's basically us. It's a small area in Custer County called Fay is where my family's homestead has been since 1902. And that is where we film all of our content today. But I grew up out there. The way the crow flies is about 1.5 miles from the homestead is where I grew up on a house on a hill right across the river in a town called Thomas. We're on the outskirts of the town. So I was very country. My nearest neighbor was 1 mile away, and grandma was the second nearest neighbor to us where she lives now. So we're all very close. Grew up at the town of 1,200 people. Graduated the class of 36 people. Very small town. Like when people think small town from big cities, they're like, oh, small town, like 8, 9, 10,000. Like, no, like 1,000. They're like 1,000. And like, how many did you graduate with? 100? I said, no, 36. And so that's like small town and, just classic small town story of played every sport, was involved in everything you could be in. I was in student council from show choir to FFA, showing pigs, all that stuff. And then also being very heavily involved in like the church youth organization, president from the time I was a sophomore until graduated. So just your classic small town story. Grew up playing sports, loved baseball the most. Had a bunch of uncles who were very successful in baseball, small town guys too, and they got drafted. I always was inspired by those guys. So after college, I went to a junior college to pursue baseball. but got hurt my first year. And then after that, I was like, it's probably not going to work out, not in the books for me to go on with this. And at that point, I was kind of figuring like, what do I got to do? What do I want to do? And the family, my cousin's a vet. So we had a vet checked off. My sister was pursuing a degree to be a medical doctor. So we got a vet and a doctor checked off. Like, what are we missing here? And my family has a lot of oil land too, but we also had to deal with a lot of land dealing. So like, we need a petroleum and land lawyer. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll go to University of Oklahoma and do some law. So I went in to University of Oklahoma, transferred over after getting my associates, and went into there and expecting I was going to be a lawyer. And my wife always makes fun of me because she's from California. She's like, you guys don't say it right in Oklahoma. It's not lawyer. And I'm like, yeah, it's lawyer. She's like, no, it's lawyer. I'm like, whatever. I don't know how I say it. But she always makes fun of me when I say that word. So I get very self-conscious of how I say it now too. But I'm like, I'm a lawyer. I was going to be a lawyer. And then while I was there, outside of the university, there was this, I found this place called the Actor Factory, and they were helping people learn how to do film and television acting. And which was way different than what I grew up doing in like so-called theater and show choir and school plays and stuff like that. But way different mindset of training and all that stuff. So I was like, I kind of want to pursue this and see what this is like while I'm studying law. Well, after my first semester at OU, I realized I hated law, hated studying it, absolutely despised it. We're learning like why certain laws are, and I was just getting more mad about like, because I've always been ingrained to be very anti-government, very limited government. Not anti totally, but limited. And that just learning all these rules is like, I do not want to like go in sitting rooms and then do all the writing for this type of stuff. So I started doing the acting at the Actor Factory and got on a few regional commercials. And I realized I want to like get my degree in this too, in this audio and video world. So I can learn. I love to tell stories. And while I was at junior college, my English professor, and I was writing stories being a baseball player, she gave me a screenwriting book. She's like, Gatlin, you're way too talented to be just a baseball player and like all this other stuff. You're like a writer. You're a storyteller. So she gave me the screenwriting book. So I like understood screenwriting from this book she gave me and like how to script things out. And I thought that was so cool because I love movies growing up. I mean, being this, small town kid and country kid, cowboy kid, you grow up and you're like John Wayne, Robert Meacham. You watch all these old classic Westerns, Bonanza to Gunsmoke on TV Land. And I loved Hee Haw, watching that with my grandpa growing up, which now me saying this probably gives you a lot of where a lot of our influence comes with how the content has turned out over the years. But that's kind of where me getting into like storytelling worked out. As I was doing the acting in front of the camera, I wanted to figure out how to do the acting behind the camera because I really was always drawn to Clint Eastwood, the Mel Gibsons of the world, and now like the Bradley Coopers, guys who could do it in front of the camera and could do it behind. And so while I was in school, I was like, I'm going to get my degree in this. I'm going to do it here regionally, and you can like make a career in a regional level and doing this stuff, and we'll take it from there and see what happens. And then my dad, I had a conversation with him one day, and he's like, the ranch is always going to be here. So why don't you, if you're going to do this thing, why don't you go really do it? Like go out to Hollywood and really try this thing out. And I was like, wow, I can't believe, he's giving me the okay to go try this out. So going into my senior year, I knew I'm going to go out to Hollywood and see what it's like out there and get ready for the big time. I'm going to go out there and show them like small town ranch kids, like we can figure it out. If anybody can make it, we can. So I went out with a buddy to visit just to see if I liked it. I went out there, fell in love with like, the nostalgia. You go down in Hollywood, you're like, oh, the movies, you go to a studio set, all this stuff. It's like so cool. Took a few meetings with some agents and managers. But while we were out there, my buddy, it was his birthday and he's turned 21. So he went out to the only two-stepping bar in the whole area that we could find. And while we were out there, I ran into a girl right away. As I said, hey, do you know how to two-step? She said, no, I don't. I said, well, let me teach you then. And, 9 years later, that girl's my wife now. So it happened all on my trip. Yeah, just visiting out there. And I still had a year left of school, and she was going to school in New York playing college softball. And so we did long distance, came back to Oklahoma. But that tie, all this stuff, the reason I tell these stories is because that's kind of what drew me out there even more. Is like, not only did I have career aspirations, but I had a love aspiration that took me there. And then when we both graduated, she moved back home. She took a job at Warner Brothers in the financial side. She's a very smart accounting type person and not the creative. I take all the creative brunt and she takes all the financial brunt. So we went back and I started our lives. I moved out there in 2016. and then started doing the thing, started auditioning all the time, started bartending, waiting tables, never done that in my life. Somehow got into a fine dining restaurant and figured out, I can really talk. The Southern charm can really get you through these doors with people, and just being nice, and people will tip you nice and all that stuff. So I just, put the smile on and had no clue what I was doing. But I could sell steaks because I knew beef and all that. So it's really funny how that, like, I got there. But when I was out there is where I really honed in on my skills of acting, storytelling. I worked with some of the best acting coaches in the world. And, my methodology of how I do stuff is so far from what they did, but I can take from so much of what I learned. Was in class with some pretty well-known name actors today. And you're like, they sharpened my tools and made me prepared for what potentially down the road God had in store for me. So that's what's really cool about that, my whole journey out there. And, that went through 4 years of that, auditioning, getting close, go to producers. You don't have enough. No one knows your name. You're a newbie. You're from Oklahoma. No one knows you. You don't have enough social media followers. I think at the time I had 500 Instagram followers. And they're like, we need people who have built-in audiences. I'm like, I hate social media. What's this about? So the big turn in the story for me, where how this all even came to be, is in 2020. We all, unfortunately had to go through the worst possible time of figuring things out in life. And my father-in-law at the time had gave me a book called Who Moved My Cheese. And he asked me one day, he's like, are you acting? Oh, he's like, are you an actor? I said, no, yeah, I'm an actor. And he goes, then don't you have to be acting to be an actor? I go, yeah. And he's like, why aren't you acting then? I said, you're right. And he goes, why don't you show people you can act? So he's like, aren't there other tools that you don't have to wait on a job? Can't you throw this stuff up on the internet and stuff? I said, you're right. I could. And I remember December 14th, 2019, I decided I'm going to launch my own YouTube channel, and I'm going to start putting out videos twice a week on YouTube. On January 7th, I launched my very first YouTube video. It was a redneck reboot of The Godfather called The Cowman. And I make famous old movie scenes and make them redneck, was like the whole point behind it. And so everything was country and not cityfied. And then I was just churning, doing that for 3 or 4 months. And then the pandemic hit, and everything in California shut down. Like you can go anywhere. Well, at the same time, I was planning on coming back to Oklahoma for a wedding. And so I had planned to shoot like a week's worth of content. I came home, like, I can make some stuff like at our farm. This will be so cool. It'll be really authentic and feel great, and not me like pretending to be in the hills in Southern California, where they actually do that in the movies too. So I went back home. My cousin Jarrett was off on vacation that week, and a lot of you all know him as Gate Bart. He said, I'll help you film these videos for your YouTube channel, man. I said, all right, great. So came home, filmed like 7 or 8 videos in that week span while helping out on the ranch for a little bit during literally the week of the pandemic launching. That is where ultimately, when I came back to California and everything was still shut down, and like you couldn't work, you couldn't do any jobs, there was no production or anything going on in Hollywood. My brother-in-law and my sister, weirdly at the same time, told me, like, you should be posting these videos on this app called TikTok. I was like, what is TikTok? Like, it's something these kids love this app. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a kid app. I'm on YouTube. I'm trying to figure YouTube out. And they're like, no, we've heard YouTubers say they've got a lot of people to their YouTube channel through TikTok. I said, okay. So I threw up one of those videos we shot that week I was in Oklahoma. I threw it up on TikTok, and the first one did like 30,000 views. And I honestly was like, what is TikTok? What the heck is this thing? And so I was just in right away on TikTok, like, wow, one video did this. So they hooked me. But then where it really everything turned while we were home, I kept editing those videos and throwing up on TikTok. They were doing like 100 views, very limited. We had that one do really well at first. And then me and Jarrett, we had ironically made a video to remake Step Brothers into a redneck version of a thing called Step Cousins. And we made a scene like, he asked me, what's your favorite type of tractor? On the count of 3, tell me. 1, 2, 3. And we both said John Deere. And we posted that one on TikTok, and that was our very first viral video. And so from there, I knew, okay, well, if Hollywood isn't going to take me, I'll figure it out this way. And I already have the skill set from schooling and from being out here for the last 4 years to figure this thing out. And so from there, I just put my head down in the ground, and we just started making videos. This is where this all happened. I was still living in California in 2020. And then long into the story here, to wrap up my journey of how we got here today, is into the end of 2020. I went back home for a month. I talked to my wife and said, hey, if I go home for a month, I was at 70,000 followers on TikTok at the time. I was like, if I can go home for a month and grow this thing by 100,000 followers, like, we got something. And like, trust me, I know we can do it. She said, sure, go try it. I mean, I think in her head, she's like, oh, who the heck did I marry? This like crazy Oklahoma ranch kid who thinks he can, now he's trying to be a social media influencer. And to this day, I still hate the concept of influencer. I'm like, I just get to do what I've been wanting to do my whole life and throw it on the internet. So I went home, and at the same time, my old manager in Hollywood, who I had a phenomenal manager, I was very fortunate. I was with one of the best management companies in Hollywood. I don't even know why they signed me at all. No clue. But the manager I had, awesome guy, I'll give him a shout out. His name is Dylan Lawson Johnston. He told me, you know what? My buddy started this thing. They're the Beer Friday guys, and like they're famous now. Like he's like, and all they just started doing skits, and they made a character people fell in love with. Like you guys should do, like you should make a character. It's like, you're an actor. Like make a character people fall in love with. And at the same time, people kept calling me a knockoff Earl Dibbles Jr. when we would do stuff. Like you're like the Make-A-Wish version of Granger Smith or all this stuff. I'm like, well, I'm not a country singer, so okay. So, but y'all want to see a knockoff? I'll make the farm boy version of Earl Dibbles Jr. because he's a country boy, and farm boys are different than country boys. So I made a farm boy version called Daryl Bibbins, and that is ultimately where the advice from my manager really took off, because when I was home, we made a bunch of those videos. We made one and it did well, and we saw something there. We're like, okay. So we spent a whole day just making farm stuff with Daryl videos. And this is right before I was coming back to California. And my cousin Jarrett, the good sport he was like, hey, we should throw, like, can I be in one as like the sidekick? Because I'm the guy always getting out and getting the gates. I'm like, yeah, let's tell everybody about getting the gate getter, the gate bee at the time is what we called him, the gate bee, the non-PG version. And so so shot all those videos, came back to California at the beginning of December of 2020, started editing those videos, put the first one out, 1 million views. I only had one other video ever hit 1 million views before that. And I was like, whoa. Okay. Next one we posted the Gate Bee video, 5 million views. I was like, whoa. And at the time, I think it was at 180,000 followers. So I did grow that 100,000 like I told my wife I would. But from like overnight in a week, we went from like 180 to 500,000 followers, like with back to back viral off these farm stuff with Daryl videos. So the end of 2020 is where I really started getting the niche of like what we're doing here. And it's like, I'm a farm boy character. This is my, when the actors think about like, what was a role that like not defined their career, but like kickstarted their career from like the Chris Pratts of Andy Dwyer's and Parks and Rec to, even just spitballing, throwing random, like, but that's like one I think of, like everyone remembers that as him, but his career after that's been tremendous. But like you had to have something to get it going. And so with that, I was able to kind of kick off the Bibbins. We call it the Bibbins Farm universe, kind of like the Marvel's universe. But I was like, oh, look, Jared, we can like Gate Bar can have his own account and start posting videos. He's like, that's cool. I guess I'll do social media. And so he created a TikTok, started posting. And then that's where ultimately Granny rolls into the picture.
Holy cow.
Long-winded, sorry.
No, I love this. I have to ask, though, to you and our listeners, in the beginning of this story, have you read and or listened to Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey?
Oh my gosh, I had that as one of my books pulled off. I did look at you I was like, you know what? I'll tell her about Green Lights, but I'll just leave it right. I'll leave it off on the side over there. But that's literally in the same time when I was posting those videos, I was reading Green Lights. So it's really, I got goosebumps thinking about when you said that.
That is totally because the lawyer turned, I'm going to take some acting classes. I'm going to go be a screenwriter because that's what I'm actually really talented with. And you have this conversation with your dad, and instead of being like, what the hell are you thinking? They say, yeah, go on with your bad self. Like, you are the farm boy version of Matthew McConaughey. There's no denying it.
I don't think I've ever gotten that, but that's actually not that's really weird that now you say it that way. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize the comparisons there, but yeah, there is a lot. And that is so funny you said that, because I was literally reading that book in that moment of, the big transition in my life when you said it. So that's so funny you say that, but yes, that is a great book. I love that book.
Okay, somebody somewhere out there knows Matthew McConaughey, and we need to get the two of you together for an afternoon. I feel like you guys are going to hit it right off.
I wouldn't mind. The one thing, me and him, he's a Texas guy and I'm an OU guy. So like that would be our one. It's like, all right, this is where we're different, Matthew. Like you're a cowboy, I'm a farm boy, OU, Texas. But other than that, we're good.
You might have the one thing that you can't agree on, but otherwise I feel like life is basically the same.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a lot of ways that we could take this conversation. And the first thing that I want to really talk about is, so obviously you told us about life in Hollywood and then kind of this move home. How did you know you were ready to make that move home? And did it come with any like difficulties, if you will? And the reason that I ask that is because oftentimes when it comes to family businesses like yours, there has to be room to support another family. And at that time, yes, you had created some viralness to your platforms, but they weren't probably necessarily things that you could like live off of and feed your family at that time. So now, though, you have created a fabulous social presence. You have created apparel lines, coffee lines, direct-to-consumer beef, all of these other things. Was that diversification part of your plan when you moved back, or has that all just kind of happened because it's happened?
Well, it's a little bit of both. In my head, and goes back to when I came back that month while I was home helping out on the farm and making videos. I was literally sometimes like when they wouldn't have it, like we weren't moving cattle or working cattle, grandma would be like, hey, I need to clean out this back porch. There's an old, like, I want to get this car out of the barn. Can you like clean out the back barn? So I was cleaning it out one day. I was listening to a podcast while I was doing all this. It was at the time one of those sway boys, but he had a business podcast, and the guy he had on there was an angel investor, and he'd interview like some big time business execs. And he was talking to one of the very first guys who were on Shark Tank. And the guy on Shark Tank said, this is where all creators or all you influencers are all messing up. He goes, people are paying you all a bunch of money to promote their brands. And I would like at this point, granted, I had like 2 companies reach out to me to like promote them for no money, just get free products. So I still was nowhere in the realm of thinking like, yeah, we'll make my own stuff before even taking a brand deal. But he was like, you should have your own product to sell to your followers or something they can support you with and not just be merch, like a true product that's going to do better in the marketplace. Ever since that moment, I remember thinking like, yeah, one day we're going to have a product that like helps agriculture and does something, or not even agriculture, but brings our way of life to people in a way. So back in my head, I go, well, we could sell beef one day. That could be cool. But like, I don't know. We'll figure that out. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But in my head, like I always thought about that. So I was like October, November of 2020. Well, then when January 2021 rolls around, I have people, everybody's asking us like, can we buy shirts with y'all's like sayings on it? Can we buy this? So I was going down that path. Like, at least we'll bring them some apparel. But I was always a guy like,
merch is better than nothing.
Yeah, nothing. And then in my head, though, I was like, this is a great way to get our brand out there and better to people and introduce it this way. And then people just want to support you. So let's do this. So I'm a stickler for quality. So like, I didn't want to just do the screen print shirts and all that. I thought I saw so many influencers doing that. I hated that. So I went down a couple of months of like, okay, write designs. Okay, let's get some shirts. Let's do this. And I talked my wife to let me invest like $20,000 worth of merchandise at the time to buy and sell to our followers. I don't know how I got her to like let me. I said, watch what happens when we do this. So I got her to let me invest like our savings into this. And then we launched the Bar X apparel, which it's funny now. Like it's like everyone like Bar X is our family's brand, which is also the Didier Ranch brand. So there's like this weird cross. But now I'm like, maybe we should just turn this into the whole Didier Ranch, just everything now in the future. I don't know, but Bar X apparel is what we launched at the time. And everything I've always wanted to do is honor my family through all of the stuff we've done. From the time I launched the YouTube channel, I called it Bar X Productions, to the apparel's Bar X apparel. And now like I get to bring the Bar X, the Didier Ranch brand to people. So I just remember getting all that apparel out. We launched February 9th. And like in the first week, I just could not believe how much, like we just made this much money in 1 week of selling merchandise. What the heck? Like it was the best investment I've made so far, way better than any of my stock market investments I ever could have imagined. Was betting on myself, even financially here. And so that's where I first got really started to like make money at this thing, was we were selling our apparel. At the same time, companies started hitting us up and they're like offering us a couple $1,000s to make a post or do this. And I was just very picky. A lot of guys aren't. They're just like, they'll take anything thrown at them. At the time I was picky. And I still have been very picky. Now we're more picky than we've ever been, but we're also not as brand friendly as we've ever been compared to most brands, which is okay by me. That's a whole nother tangent we can go down later. But for me to answer your questions, like there always was this plan to diversify the family business and bring my value and like show like where else can I help this. And then my goal, when I moved out to California, I remember like one of the very last thoughts I had, I like drove around the ranch, was looking at everything, like thinking, I don't know if I'll be back for 40 years, like truly be back. I'm like, one day I'm going to come back and help. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make a bunch of money and I'm going to help this thing, hopefully my dad and uncle and everybody else can figure it out until I get back. Until then, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go do my thing and come back. Well, fortunately, 5 years later, 6 years later, whatever it was, I came back a lot sooner than I planned. And now I am getting to help and do it the way I can help, not just doing it the same old way we've always done it and bringing, us into a whole different marketplace than we've ever been able to get into before. So that was always in my brain. It's like, I'm going to come back and help somehow. So I guess that's where like the Bar X inspiration comes into the content, to the apparel, to now is doing the beef and doing it to honor my family's heritage, honor my grandpa, who was a big inspiration in my life. No longer with us. He passed in 2010, but as a Granny's husband. So I've always everything I always do was like to honor him, honor the stuff that him and his family went through. And then everything my dad and my uncle have worked so hard to build up now. And that's where like the content and like everything's kind of been inspired too. Is Daryl Bibbins is just a mixture of a knockoff of Earl Dibbles Jr., but also a mixture of like my grandpa's personality. And then the way he dresses is literally how my dad dressed. So like, I just like, that was my inspirations for the character. And in a way, it's like I wasn't mocking them. I was trying to honor them in like the way I knew how to. And it's when you psychoanalyze it that way, it's really cool to realize, man, the only thing I've ever wanted to do is just like make my family proud. And I guess we're doing it.
You're really doing it. Okay. So I'm glad you talk about content, because I will say your content really does strike a balance between being funny, it's on the farm or on the ranch relatable for a lot of other people in the industry. And yeah, it is kind of somehow serious in the sense that you really focus on what is important to you as far as like God, family, and country. But it's not too serious to the point where people don't want to watch because it's like heavy, if you will. Kind of like that's why we don't want to turn on the news, because, it's heavy. So how do you strike a healthy balance between all of that?
Well, for us, it also, like I said, farm stuff is how it started. And like, so that was fun to like, that came from inspiration of somebody from Canada. And it's like Montreal asked, like, what are those the wind pumps behind us? We call them windmills, even though they weren't milling grain. The wind pumps, what are those? So like, I was like, are you serious? I guess so I started talking to city people in a country voice, like if they were a child, like, this is a windmill. When the wind blows, the fan moves, like being very sarcastic. Cause that's just my sense of humor. Sometimes, the best way to like tell people something is just break it down very slowly and, like a child could understand it. And that's kind of where that turn went for like inspiration to how we went there. Like talking about educating people, but doing it in a humorous way. So educate people in humor. It's the easiest way to get people to listen. So that was our approach there. And then we realized like, oh, you have to use these trending sounds and all this stuff, but how can we get a message across? How about we just like trick people that we're going to do a thirst trap, but then Granny comes up and just like tells us like, hey, morals over hussies, morals over selling your soul, principles over all this, stuff on social media. So that was like, okay, how can we Trojan horse how to get our message across there? And then now it's evolved into more of a, skit. We always say like, it's like if Andy Griffith and South Park had a baby, that's kind of what we're at now. And it's all set on a farm. So that's where we're at now. Now we literally can talk about anything going on in the world and apply it to the farm. And also be educational, be funny, talk about something serious. But the only way you can really, I've talked to a lot of people, especially in, with election season coming up, or just like serious issues within the agricultural community, from EID tags to the things going on in Idaho. How can you get that message across to people and to watch on a viral level without being like, guys, have you heard what's going on in Idaho? It's like, we can do it. You Trojan horse it through comedy. Because comedy, someone once said, I can't remember exactly the quote is, all comedy is society holding up a mirror and seeing itself. And that's just the truth. And that's what I love about doing everything through a comedic aspect. But you're also being able to just show people the reality of everything going on, kind of make fun of it, but also bring up serious issues where like normally we wouldn't want to digest it. And then ultimately it just makes it more consumable for the watcher and the viewer. And that's where we've been able to just kind of morph into what we're doing now. And like I said, some people like it, some people don't, but it seems to be like there's a lot more people who like this angle of things. And it allows me to get to be super creative because the algorithms make us like, you can't say certain words, you can't be this, you can't talk about certain things. So my brain's like, oh, this is a challenge. It's like trying to like figure out a map to like escape out of a prison or like an escape room. But it's like, how can we escape the algorithm's chains to like get us out to the masses is like the analogy I use for it. And it's fun from a creative perspective, but also it's like, people from our way of life don't get the voice heard for them. So how can we represent what people in our way of life think and get it out to the masses to understand like our thought process more? And it's a privilege and an honor to get to do it. And I just feel blessed that I get to do it and use these skills that I've acquired over my short life.
So speaking of, some people like it and some people don't. Obviously, that can bring forth some pretty negative and cruel comments. How do you deal with those and not let them stop you from sharing what you're passionate about? And I feel like there's also those comments who are coming from others within our industry, even who, in comparison to those, for lack of a better term, like outsiders, if you will.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you said, you want to kind of unite agriculture and bring people behind the curtain and share industry as a whole. So one, yeah, how do you deal with people from in the industry knocking you down? And two, how do you deal with just like negative and cruel comments in general? Because I think that the fear of those is what stops a lot of people from sharing. And I think that we all kind of have to look fear in the face at some point. And it's not a good enough reason to not share, but I want you to share your tricks and tips for how you like have grown your thick skin.
Well, I mean, honestly, the way my wife and probably most closest to me would tell you that I am about as stubborn as you can be. And like, so if you tell me I can't do something, I'm probably going to do it and then do it my way and do it like 1,000 times harder than ever. And like, I'm just going to prove my point. If I truly believe in like what I believe, I'm very stubborn, but also that belief is what gets me through my faith. Like knowing, like, I feel like God is like my gut instinct on something. If God's telling me I got to talk about this, like he's given me this stuff, like that's where my faith has always came in. Like, hey, I'm going to go to California. Hey, I'm going to get into acting. Hey, I'm going to marry this girl who, like those types of things. I just like feel like I'm very in tune with what I want to say and what's right in my gut. So I don't let whatever the consequences to be, because when you have companies who say you have 6-figure deals on the table, and then they go, "Hey, our company doesn't align with that message you said. Can you delete that video?" And you go, "But that's exactly what I align with." No, when money gets involved, all that stuff, that's when you really get to test yourself as a person. But I think what set me up for all that, honestly, when I really going back to analyzing everything, is I'm from a small town, and a lot of people know how small town people think, and even since I was a kid, I was like, people like, "Oh, don't sing too loud." Well, I would sing louder, or like, "Hey, don't get mad on the baseball field. Don't be passionate. Like, that's not good." Like, I'd get mad. Like, I just was like, I didn't care about what those said. And like, I mean, Jesus in his own hometown wasn't, and not to compare myself to Jesus, but like, as an example, like he like had to leave Nazareth because the people didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, And so like, starting out, like I remember posting my videos and I couldn't get one like from any of my friends or any of the people in my hometown. And to this day, I think I've sold like probably 10 products to our entire people in our town with our merchandise. And we've sold thousands and thousands of things nationwide. But to this day, like you're going to get that in your own community. You're not going to get the support. And I learned this even in agriculture, that in the industry itself can be so, they call it gatekeeping. And it's kind of ironic with our gate BART and all the stuff we do. But our industry in the country western space, we can be so protective in a good way, but also in a bad way where people aren't willing to change and adapt their ideas. Like I'm literally using social media to help my family make our ranching operation more stabilized for the future and more sustainable for the future, and make it a more profitable business in the future. But a lot of people are so against that they're not willing to pivot and change their life. And like going back to the book, I mentioned Who Moved My Cheese. Like that's what that whole book's about, is like, the cheese is over here. You're going to stay here and wait to die because there's no cheese here? Or are you going to move, pivot, and go find the new cheese? And so my mindset's always been that way. It's just like, hey, you got to be willing to adapt, and like, don't make fun of people who are trying to at least like push the button and do something different. They're not, some of these people are really making a difference. And in the industry, I've seen it. Like I saw it the other day on TikTok, because I guess there was like, is it Husker Harvest Days or something in Nebraska? I can't remember the exact name. I have friends who were up there. And I saw a few farm TikTok guys be like, who the heck cares about you're going to be at booth 1027 signing autographs at this point, all this? Like, who gave you the power to do that? You're just a farmer. It's like, dude, those people also don't even, like, they just have people genuinely want to come and see them. So they're just letting them know. It's not like they're saying, hey, I'm going to charge you $10 an autograph or any of that stuff. It's like, why do you got to be that way? I've just learned like this community will do it. Your own small town, your own church community will do it to you. Your own family will do it to you. So at the end of the day, it's just a product of community. And so I don't read too much into any of it, because at the end of the day, I just also know who I am and I know where I stand. And when you don't read the comments too much, or you don't worry about what everyone thinks, even though we do care. Like we want people to appreciate and like the message we're trying to get across. Like when you just don't care, as long as you get out what you're meant to get out and want to get the message out, what you try, if you felt like you did what you were meant to do, none of that really matters. So that's kind of how I deal with the negativity on the internet and within agriculture.
On a more serious note, because again, kind of on the same topic, for anybody who may claim, well, this guy calls himself a rancher and who's to say he really is because he's out there making social videos all day long. You guys have farmed and ranched since the 1800s, and you and your family actually operate a century ranch, which means that you guys have been in business for more than 100 years on the same location. That kind of longevity does not happen unless you guys are really good at what you do. So can you kind of give us a little clap back at those who may think like, oh, Daryl Bibbins doesn't know what he's talking about?
Well, I don't know what I'm talking about, honestly. Like when it comes in, I say like I'm just really good at throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. But it's just like I've known like the kid Bailey Zimmerman. Met him his first week. He went to Nashville. He was good friends with a buddy of mine through social media and met him. And like it's been cool to see his come up. But people claim all the time, like, that kid ain't country. And like, when I met that kid, he was country, but he was like Nickelback country. Like he's still country. So like, I know what happens to him with it. And it happens in gatekeeping within our industry. People do this to Cody Johnson. It's like, that guy's like the most cowboy dude ever. And people want to like say, he ain't cowboy. It's like, are you serious? When it comes to that, like my family's been doing it forever. I grew up doing it. It literally was my job doing all this stuff. Literally me and Jared's making of our videos is us recreating a lot of the situations we were in as a kid, or like from like we were bored and the things we'd come up with. It's just because Jared would come and work on our ranch with us in the summers when we were teenagers. Again, it's like people can tell you're not what you are, but you know what you are. So you don't worry about all that. But to me, it's an honor because I say you have something that's been around for 100 years, because there's a lot of businesses that have been successful, have came and went in way less time than that. I think it goes back to that point of being stubborn. When you look at my family's history, it's like these French people and Irish people came in the 1800s out here, and then they just said, we're gonna stay out here, and then we're gonna farm. We're gonna do that here. Like, okay. And then they made it through all the craziness. We stick around through the Dust Bowl. Like, what crazy Oklahomans stuck around through the Dust Bowl? Like the ones who were legitimately crazy or didn't know how to get out of here. And like, that's where that stubbornness I think I get. It's like in my DNA. It's wired in, hardwired to the Didier side, because we've been at the same spot doing the same thing for over 120 years now. And now I think all that has truly allowed us, like, okay, since we've stuck around this long, maybe people will pay attention to like people who've like at least kept a tradition going. I think that's what we're yearning for most as Americans now and as families, is all that is like tradition truly is something that we all aspire to have. And a lot of people are missing that now because we've tried to wipe it and eradicate it within all cultures. And what's one thing my family can say we have a lot of tradition. And I'm darn proud to say that I grew up ranching, grew up farming, been around doing it my whole life. Yeah, I went to Hollywood for 6 years out of my 30 plus years so far. Went out there for a short bit, got a new skill, and now applying it to the skills I already had and what my family's been doing forever. So you can call me whatever you want, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to take care of what me and my family can do. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can control. You can control you, and you can't really control what anyone else does or say or feels about you.
No, I think that's a good point. And again, it kind of goes back to people's nasty and negative and mean comments. Usually those come from a place of them feeling like jealous or insecure, being in a dark spot themselves. I always think hurt people hurt people. So if somebody is saying something negative to you, and says more about them and less about you because they're actually probably in a dark place, which is unfortunate. And it's also a good reminder to not be nasty ourselves on the internet. Yes. Like if we wouldn't like the comment made to us, why make the comment to somebody else? I think that there's an important lesson in the golden rule of treating others the way you want to be treated, whether it is in person, online, however it is.
It's so hard not to. Like, it's so hard because I've had to refrain probably thousands of times. Like, and the best lesson I learned, somebody one time was like, just type it out and then don't send it. Just delete it. So just to get it out of your system. I've done a lot. There's a few instances where I probably could go back and track. Like, I'm like, I had to come back. I couldn't leave it. Couldn't let it be. Like, we have certain trolls who just have been like nonstop for years, like literally putting up that, like, something about farm subsidies. It's really ironic. Like, my dad and my uncle run Didier Ranch, that whole operation. My uncle has his own stuff. Well, some guy will come on there and be like, your guys is milking the government and subsidies. And it's like, my uncle's been farming for 40 years on his own. And it's like, that's all his stuff for 40 years. That's nothing to do with us. And what? Like, what do you, like, they literally try to put or dox you. Like, people have tried to use my address to like, this guy lives here. He don't live on the ranch. It's like, well, no, I don't live on the ranch because it's our ranch land. It's like, why would I live on the ranch with like, just because Daryl, the character in that world is all there doesn't mean like I actually live there. It just blows your mind. That's how like people go. But at the end of the day, like you can control you and those people project on you and have fun. It's just so hard not to get back. And every once in a while, I never dox people, but every once in a while I'll chirp back but your followers usually take care of it for you.
Okay, so kind of, again, along the same line, how do you still stay grounded and not let your social fame get to your head or remind yourself that social media can be taken away in an instant and that side could be gone?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have so many anchors in my life that remind me every day, they like humble me. And number one, I wake up, I turn over, my wife's right there and she's known me before any of this stuff. Like, so to her, this is nothing special. Like this is like at all. So I wake up very humble with that. And then I have my little girl who very much humbles me because she does not care about any of that stuff. So all she cares about is dad. Like she don't care about like, oh, people follow you or, oh, people like wait in line to see you guys or people buy
I still need my diaper change. So come on over. Yeah. Like all of I still need my milk. No, you're still a snack bee. Move aside the gate bee. Like you're a snack bee for life now.
milk bee. Oh, daddy, I want to dance to music bee. Okay. Like that humbles you. And then like when I get reminded, like when sometimes we go do our stuff, grandma Kay, and I know we're going to get into her a little bit more here. She is like the ultimate humbler to me because she'll like even ask me like, so how many followers you got on Instagram? Like, and then she doesn't know, she's trying to like, I'm like, you're right, grandma, you have more than me. She's like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I still got you on TikTok, grandma. And she goes, oh yeah, we'll see about that. So we have like this little feud about like who's got more. But at the end of the day, she honestly has like no clue that she has millions of followers on her own. She still lives on the farm all by herself. She goes to Walmart and like the biggest thing for her is like, does she get recognized? If she gets recognized at Walmart, it's the greatest day ever. If she doesn't, she goes, are my videos not doing well? Because no one said hi to me today at Walmart. So that humbling reminder for me is like, that is how innocent this really truly can be. Like even at 80 years old, like this lady doesn't understand it, but she also is like just still herself through it all too. And being around. So I guess ultimately it's like having really good women in your life can ultimately keep you grounded and humbled in faith. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like when you're strong in your faith and you have a very solid foundation and you're willing to work on that relationship frequently, which I'm always working on because I'm not where I need to be. I want to be the version that God made me to be, and I'm not there yet. So those are the things that keep me humble through this success we've had and hopefully continue to have going forward.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you brought up the women aspect because the next thing that's going to humble you in life is that little girl of yours who is going to get the stubborn genetics that you have, because we have one of those. And holy cow, I often wonder, like, is she actually going to make it to where she's 30 years old or like, I don't know.
I'm really worried because there's already signs that she may be more stubborn than me. And I'm like, no. I feel bad for her brother whenever he gets here.
I know. I always joke, like Jackson will either be the president of the United States or the leader of a prison gang, depending on how she channels herself. Like, we'll see. Are you going to pick the good road or are you going to pick the bad road? Because either way.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so on the topic of grandma, because now I want to go shopping in a rural Oklahoma Walmart the next time that she is in the aisles. How did you talk her into joining in on the fun? Has she always been a fun haver? Because, yeah, let's be honest, she is totally a bigger deal than you are. She's a bigger deal than anybody else is at the Bar X. Did you have an idea that she would explode the way that she has?
My father-in-law put it best. He goes, you're really good at like seeing the potential in people and then like understanding them and then drawing the best out of them. I said, I guess, I don't know. He said, no, you're really good at it. That's why you saw your grandma and you knew her for years. You knew she was a star, but you just like had to make it happen. I was like, I guess, I don't know. For me, simply, it was dumb luck. Like one day she was doing something in the yard. I was making a TikTok. It was like snowing or something. And she literally asked me, hey, can you get the mail that day? And I was like, yeah, let me get it. And I go, wait, grandma, ask me that as Daryl. And she goes, why? I said, just we'll see what happens. Let's
Just
have fun
trust
with it.
me.
And so she's like, Daryl, you get my mail? I said, yes, Granny. So I'm like walking in there. I was like, when Granny asks you to do something, you do it. And I like get her mail the thing. I walk in. It was like literally 2 degrees in Oklahoma that day. I run in, I hand her mail, and she goes, thanks, Daryl, like without a cue on that. And then that's kind of where it started. And then people like, show us more of this Granny lady. And then this is kind of at the point when like I was noticing all these thirst trap videos were doing well. So we would stitch like girls trying to dance and do like basically naughty stuff for like the first 3 seconds. And I'd react like, ooh. And then I was like, well, I think it'll be really funny because like, I'm married. Like, this is really weird if I don't like, we don't like put a wall on this while we're doing
Chop
this.
it off.
So Granny comes in and like smacks me like, what are you doing? And I said, I was just watching a TikTok, Granny. Like, it just scrolled up on my For You page. She goes, leave them hussies alone. And then that's where I'm like, oh, wow. So we were starting to get a lot of traction with Granny, just like as a side character on my page. And we're like, let's just like, Grandma, we should just make a TikTok of your account. Like, just see what happens. She's like, sure. So we went, this at the time, the song Black by Dierks Bentley was like, make my world go black. And so it'd be like in color and go black and like doing like montage stuff around the farm. So we like made one with Granny for fun. And the first one did like 770,000 views and she had 0 followers. And like within, I think it was like 30 days, she had 100,000 TikTok followers. We're like, okay, Granny's kind of a big deal. She won't post like every other day or anything, but when she posts, it's going to be powerful. And then she was like, I like this. She was like having fun being in our stuff. And it just like slowly became like, she was always at the farm. She's always there, like working in her yard, doing something. So like she was always on set. So it's like, why don't we just like have her, be in this fun? And she just has fun with it. And so over time, I kind of got to see like, I see why people like her and I see like what's about her. I was like, what's people are responding to and what's not. And I get to do this mother-son dynamic, even though she's my grandma, like that grandma-grandson that so many people relate. And that's ultimately where content works is like, can you make stuff people relate to?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the buddy comedy thing with my cousin going on. And I had like the agricultural, talking to dumb city people thing going on by myself. I was like, here's a missing element. It's the family element of like the grandma-grandson. So we started doing that, but like doing it from a comedic aspect and it just blew up. We just started doing that. And then over time, like a year doing TikToks with her, she's at like 200,000 followers. Like, okay, that's pretty good. I like launched an Instagram page with her. First video did 20 million. I was like 20 million. And she had like 80,000 followers within a week on Instagram. So I'm like, all right, this lady is just something about her is gold. People love this old farm lady. And I also learned kind of like seeing it as like, an 80-year-old lady can get away with saying a lot more stuff than we can get away with saying as, 30-year-old white guys that, like in Hollywood, you are like the worst thing to cast right now. So I was like, maybe she can kind of be the voice for us to say stuff like when we can't. And then we'll see how social media's response to it. And then, so that's where like we kind of made the switch. Like I was the lead for a long time and we like somehow I was able to kind of finagle it, like where grandma became the lead and I got to step back and be more of like a character within our world. Then I can direct and be more focused on content and not trying to be the leading man of all of it too. And it puts all the pressure on her, which she doesn't even realize is pressure. So it's like, it weirdly became this thing. And now it's like, we just have so much fun with it. And when we can make videos, we make them. And when she's not on trips or at her family reunions or off doing something and she's at the farm, we do it. And if we can't do it, that's okay. And she gets to go take trips for the social media stuff too sometimes. It's just a blast for her. So me and her's relationship was always fun like this. We were always together playing the wheat truck. But she was my strict grandma. And so growing up, like no sugar in my tea. I couldn't do anything. I'd get in trouble all the time. And she probably spanked me more than any grandkid got. I was the baby of the family and I deserved every spanking I got. Probably deserved a lot more. Again, stubborn as could be, but me and her's relationship is like, it within our content, I think that's probably why it shows through is it's very authentic. Even though it comes from the scripted side, it is truly me and her. Like we'll walk in and we just start bickering at each other for fun. And like we both are razzing each other. And like, and my guy who works for us now, Connor, he's like, sometimes I can't tell if y'all are actually fighting or if like y'all are just like, he's like, sometimes I just wish I would record this stuff. I said, don't do it because people don't know. Like me and grandma are literally, I'd get in trouble, get canceled, but we don't actually fight. And then she'll like call my mom. She's like, me and Gatlin had this big fight today. And then it won't even be a fight. It's funny how she'll like blow things out of proportion in her head too. So we just have so much fun. And it's really cool to get to see somebody live a whole nother life, like at the back end of their life. And I mean, I didn't anticipate it, but it's been really cool to see and to experience firsthand how she's became America's granny in the last couple of years.
She totally has. And honestly, it's probably something that kind of keeps her young in a way because it's out of her comfort zone. And yeah, old dogs can learn new tricks. Yeah. Although Granny Bibbins is not an old dog by any means.
No.
Okay, let's hit the rapid fire round. What is the best piece of business or personal advice that you've ever been given?
The best piece of business or personal advice I've ever been given. Man, that's a good one. Honestly, at the end of the day, what I'm like really working on now better, and it's really something is like, you can really only affect those around you. You really can only affect those around you when it comes into business and it comes into life. So take care of your people around you. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that impact, that inspiration, that effect you have will go out further. So the more you work on what's around you, and again, I'm still working on it, but that's the best advice someone's given me besides, like I said, to pivot. Like, don't be afraid to pivot in life. And that's what my father-in-law gave me that inspiration one day when he gave me a book, 90 pages long. It's not that hard to read, but don't be afraid to pivot when your cheese gets moved. So those two things, like take care of those around you and don't be afraid to pivot, would be like the two best pieces of advice I've ever gotten.
If you were to give somebody advice, what words of wisdom would you give to somebody if you knew that they were going to like listen and take it to heart? What would it be? Because sometimes what has impacted us is not necessarily the thing we want to tell other people.
Yes. One of my favorite things to mention to people, I always tell them, I gave a speech at an event not long ago, and one day I heard Joe Rogan say this, and he said, when you live life, when you're the hero of your own story, that's when you can really start making a difference. So, at the beginning of every movie, when you have your protagonist, it's like they're going through something and you get to be on this journey with them, and they wake up out of bed, life stinks, they're broke. It's like Rocky, watching Rocky, and then he becomes Rocky. It's like, you can be the Rocky of your own story, be the hero. So I love to tell people, when you start living the life, like you're the hero of your own story and not someone else's story, that's when you really start living life to the fullest and you really become the best version of yourself, which ultimately is the version that God's wanting you to be. So if I could give anybody a piece of, I love that too. I guess that's somewhere, no one gave that to me. I listened to it and then I love to just put that spin on it. It's like, when you become the hero of your own story, you truly start living in the best ways possible, and the best things start happening to you too.
Oh, amen to that. If you could go to dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
See, I love this question because I mean, the most obvious one would be Jesus. I'd be very interested in that conversation, but I feel like everybody, like a lot of people say that when I do hear that question get asked. But to me personally, if I could, because it's also like very comparative with stories and stuff. And my wife grew up in a place called Simi Valley, California, which happens to be home of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. So when we first met, I got to go and I loved Ronald Reagan before that. My grandpa Jimmy, who again, big inspiration, told me, I remember being like 8 years old. He's like, Reagan was the best president we've ever had. So I just have always been I admired the guy's career, his life, the journey he went on. Small town kid in Illinois, to then became a radio announcer, then went to Hollywood, became a big time actor, then became governor of California. And then one day the president, and like that journey, that story. I would love to have a dinner with him, pick his brain, him and Nancy, bring my wife Christine with me. Would love to sit down and pick the old Gipper, pick his brain and see what life was like. I would love to have a dinner with Ronald Reagan. That'd be awesome.
Oh, today might be a presidential day. So if for those listening, I usually do record podcasts maybe like once or twice a month. So I have 6 interviews in the next 2 days. And somebody before you, they had said JFK. So today might just be like a presidential theme. We'll have to see.
That's a good one too. I've grown to admire JFK a lot more now too. And like knowing what he went against and everything too. And becoming more of a history buff on these things has been cool to learn. But yeah, that's a good one. I like, presidents. It might be.
I know. A common theme today. Okay. So what is a quote that you lead your life by?
Man, number one, iron sharpens iron as a friend sharpens a friend. I believe Proverbs 22:22, right? 22 or 17:22. I don't know why, but that's like one of my favorite things is as iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens a friend. I love that quote from the Bible. But the other thing, I have this reminder on my desk, and this is the one thing, and it's like you look at it, and again, to quote Ronald Reagan, he had this same thing on his desk at the Oval Office, and it says, "There's no limit to what a man can do or where he can go if he doesn't mind who gets the credit." So I try to live my life that way, is like, you have no limits if you don't care who wins in the end. You have no limits because you're limitless at that point. And it's a good reminder to look over and see that thing every day. Not every day when I'm at my desk, but when I'm at my desk, it's a good reminder.
I like that. Okay, last question for you today. Let's talk about favorite things. You mentioned a couple of books, but do you have like a favorite podcast program, maybe like a life hack? Do you have a content life hack or like a recording life hack for people? Maybe an app you love? Like what? Share something with us that you just want more people to know about.
Oh man, that's loaded. I could answer probably every one of those. So real quick, I brought out a couple of my favorite books. I'm just going to show people, or I'll tell us, I won't show them, but I'll show you. So Wild at Heart, for every young man out there, needs to read this book by John Eldredge. It's a great book. Check it out. It's just a great journey of like what it is to be a man in your faith too. Another book for those out there who love science and the facts, Proof of Heaven. Awesome book. It's a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife by Eben Alexander. It's a really cool story. And that I had faith growing up, but this book solidified my faith as a young man in college, especially when you get in the acting world where no one has faith.
I was going to say, that's a interesting time to get with it in college.
Oh, I would wear this cross neck, this exact one in my acting classes. I literally had atheists ask me like, it's so cool that like you're so proud of like your faith. Like, what's it like to have faith? And so I would give my quick testimonial to them, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. So who knows if those people ever got, converted later on in life. And the other cool book, speaking of JFK, is this book called Chaos. I'm also a history, just love history my whole life. It's a book and the title's called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. So it's a mixture of like Jason Bourne meets a little bit of conspiracy.
Okay.
Meets like a genre. And I love period pieces. I love movies that reflect the time, whether it's like 1923, the TV series, or like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I love those things. And then, I mean, those are my favorite like types of books to read. Life hack, work out every day. If you can, do something to move your body. Like even farmers and ranchers, they're the worst about they're taking care of their personal health. And that's a big journey I'm on right now. And the only company we're working with right now that aligns 100% with our values and will not cancel me is this company called First Form. I've got their logo on right now. The podcast that their owner has called the Real AF Podcast. His name's Andy Frischilla. Awesome podcast. They care, but they have no, like he's self-funded. He's a self-made man. So he doesn't need other people's money. So he's not controlled. And so I love people who are not controlled by anything but the higher spirit. So those are my little hacks. Take care of yourself every day. Eat right. Watch what you're eating. We have a lot of junk out there, especially being a dad now. I'm like very conscious of what my daughter eats because I was a chubby kid. I ate a lot. I mean, like Grandma Kay wouldn't give me sugar. My other grandma gave me all the sugar I wanted. My mom gave me all the sugar and I was chubby. So I take pride in being able to be as healthy as I can so I can be the best version for my daughter every day and be here for later on in life, being able to crawl and play and all that stuff. And then working with people who align with you and being a part or supporting brands who align with you. So if you could go support a podcast or a company outside of us and your podcast, of course, I'd highly recommend the Real AF Podcast and First Form's supplement company. Just top of the line products, but just top of the line people. And when you can find good people, you're going to make a difference in the world.
Oh, amen to that. Okay. And then last plug, if by chance somebody is not following you online, which I can't imagine who wouldn't be, but where can they find you? Where can they get some Bar X Ranch gear? You guys have a pretty sick line of caps. You're wearing one now. Obviously, people can't see you, but if you guys are going to have to now, you can't just use your imagination. You got to go to the website and check it out. Where can people find you?
So if anybody ever wanted to buy beef directly from a ranch, buy ours, which we take pride in the quality we produce, and everything almost grades out as prime graded beef that we put out there. So, or upper choice, but mainly prime. We try to get everything primed. You can go to didierranch.com to get any of our beef boxes, and then coming here by the time this airs, maybe, or in the October to November-ish timeframe, we're launching beef jerky from our ranch, a line of beef jerky and beef sticks too. And it's not just like your good old like put together beef jerky. We've spent months developing and getting this right and being as healthy as we can make it while giving great taste and great flavor. And then if you want to buy merch or buy any of Granny's organic 100% low acid coffee, you can go to GatlinDidier.com. My name, Gatlin, Didier.com. And you can buy any of our stuff there, and that supports us. Any purchase from one of those supports me and my family, and we greatly appreciate it. And we don't take any money from these platforms. Like I've never taken a cent from TikTok, never taken a cent from Instagram. So we don't get paid by them with these views we get. The only thing we try to do is like, hey, if you like us, what we're about, share our stuff, share it out there on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever, you want to share our stuff or support us by buying some of our stuff. And that's all we can ask for.
Okay. Well, you guys, that's all the places that you can go support the BarX fam. Thank you so much, Gatlin. This was awesome. I will say we're going to have to bring this back, but I want your wife on the show because I feel like she probably has some good stuff to tell and we want to pick her business brain. So yeah. And we got to keep you humble, right? But anyways, no, thank you so much for today. This was awesome. You guys go follow, go shop, go support in some way, go share a video. It really does mean the world to creators like Gatlin and his whole crew. So with that, you guys always know you can catch us back here for the next episode next week. And with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and we will see you then.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.